Welcome back, one and all, to another Cedar Flags. We are finally back, and there's been a little bit of a break in between episodes that I probably should talk about. For a little while at the beginning of the break, I was actually in Canada for a wedding. Had a great time up in the Great North. Is that the Great North? Yeah, whatever. I then came home and caught the worst cold of my life, and it's July. Like, how does that even happen? I don't know. But I am back. I can finally talk without coughing, so I'm finally getting around to recording this. I've had this footage recorded probably for, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks now. It's just kind of been sitting edited, and I just couldn't physically do the voice work, but we're finally getting around to it. So this episode, we're actually gonna not be doing too much in terms of like building. There's a ton of landscaping in this episode, so if landscaping isn't really your thing, I'm sorry. I can promise you that the next episode is going to be really cool. We're gonna actually be building another roller coaster. So I already have that recorded, so that was actually the benefit of being sick and not being able to talk, is I could sit down and just focus on recording. So actually, for the first time, I think, ever for this series in particular, I have a backlog of, I think, 2 or 3 episodes now. So after this one, next week, I will have another one, and I'm hoping to make Thursday the release date for this series. So I'm actually going to be on vacation for a week starting next week, but it's okay because I already have an episode. So we should be okay. And then moving forward, I really want to start getting really good at releasing this series every Thursday. So I want you guys to hold me to that. I hope I can make it work for you guys. And hopefully, moving forward here, we'll be able to do some really cool things. The next episode, I don't want to talk about it too much because we'll get to it eventually, but we do a big chunk of building, I guess. The next coaster is large, let's just say that, so I don't want to tease it too much, but I am really looking forward to having you guys along for that ride when we get to it. But what have we been doing so far in this episode? Well, like I said, mostly it's just landscaping, and it's very subtle landscaping. You've been seeing me do a little bit of terrain work, and we're actually outlining all of that terrain work with these really awesome little rock boundaries. I don't really know what to call this, but we're varying the level of the terrain, just building some natural looking rolling hills and then landscaping around that. So I just really wanted to fill out all of this area that we kind of had left blank by the queue for this here. I keep trying to call this a merry-go-round, but it is not. It is a Ferris wheel, yes. But yeah, we had a lot of blank space, and I just really wanted to fill that in with something. I didn't want to go too crazy with like trees and stuff, so in lieu of that, we actually have some really laid-back landscaping. And then, of course, we get to the rocks. And if you've ever joined me for a live stream, you'll know that the chat loves to make fun of me when I'm playing with rocks in this game. It seems to come up quite a bit, and actually it comes up in a lot of the games I play over on Twitch. So for whatever reason, we have a rocks command, and yeah, it's just a whole lot of rock, and I don't know. It's just this whole hill that we had over here. Like I said when I was building the Ferris wheel over here, this is kind of like the transition to that lower part of the park over here near the lake. So yes, I didn't want to keep building that retaining wall, so what we're doing is trying to gradually slope that hill down, and we're using a lot of natural look to make that happen. I don't want to make it look like we have like this artificial like just drop in terrain levels. So using all of these rocks and this very overgrown look, we're making somewhat of a natural thing. It's like there was a ravine already here, and we just built our park around it. So a lot of just overgrown bushes going through here. A lot of rocks are tucked away in there. Different color rocks. I'm trying to kind of vary what's going on in our theming. But when this is all said and done, we have a little bit of a weird area over here. So this little flat area down near the train track, it's going to be kind of awkward. We're going to try to figure something out there for like a future build. I'm not really sure what we're going to do down there just yet, but I will say that the new roller coaster goes in around there. So there is a lot of room, and it's all coming together, but moving forward, we're just gonna have like some kind of awkward builds that we're gonna have to do. So I'm still trying to think of ways to kind of do that, and I guess I'll show you that in the live portion of this video. But this is actually something right now that I wasn't necessarily planning on spending a ton of time on, but it actually ended up taking up a majority of the stream that night that we were doing this. I wanted to get rid of those little lights that we had placed from, I think, probably episode 5-ish, if I'm just off the top of my head picking that out. We had made some of these weird looking lights, and I really wanted to replace that. So I wanted to make sort of like a custom trash can skin, and we actually end up doing that. We're using these ladders to make these like cool little rungs, and then we're using art blocks to fill in around it, and then of course we're going to try to put something over the top of it to make it kind of like an enclosed trash can. Now I know the guests actually like throw trash into it, so it kind of breaks it, but it ends up looking more realistic like a trash can. I think I have this saved, and it may or may not be in the Steam Workshop, so you can go ahead and grab this trash can skin for yourself, and of course put it in your park. Now the annoying thing about this is the trash can itself doesn't actually go with this little building piece. So when you actually have to go in and place this, you have to go in and place the building down, or the skin, or whatever you want to call it, and then you have to go in and, of course, put the trash can in separately. So it was designed for the little wooden trash can, but I'm sure most of the trash cans will fit. And I say wooden, it's like the I don't even know what it is. It's just a generic little wood-paneled trash can. I don't know. Maybe none of the other trash cans will fit just looking at them now, but this one fits nicely, and it's also got a really nice light. So we actually sank an area light down below the surface of the path, so it's actually lighting up the area. But then on the outside at the bottom, we actually have like a light source, so it looks like it's actually emitting light, even though the lights that we have on the trash can skin itself don't actually like emit any light. So yeah, it's just a little touch that I probably spent too much time on, but it ends up making the park look a little bit more realistic. So that's one of those things that you kind of have to eat the time and do if you want the park to look really good. But we're back, we're playing with some more rocks, and of course just trying to vary it up. We actually, at this point in the park, we have some like natural themes going on. So you actually saw me go and take some of the rock samples from the Alpine River Rush area and then bring them over here. And really at this point and moving forward, I think the park may get a little bit easier to make because we have so many like samples of work. We can go back and grab things and start to copy and paste them and then tweak them enough to like they don't look cookie cutter, but they are going to be a lot of work done at once. So it's going to be kind of nice moving forward. I'm going to try to do that more just to save some time, and I think it's going to end up looking pretty good either way. It's going to keep a consistent theme throughout the park, but I don't know. Anyway, we're doing a little bit of like fence work up here. You saw me try to make a custom fence. It really was kind of weird with the double layered fence. So we took this like spiked pike fence. I don't even know if that's the right word, but we turned it upside down and we end up sinking it into the ground, and it ends up making a nice little barrier up here. So the queue for the Ferris wheel doesn't actually have a fence on it. It's more of like a nature walk up to the Ferris wheel, which is awesome, but it ends up not having any boundaries. So I really wanted to make some sort of boundary because we do kind of have this like gradual yet somewhat sheer cliff right next to the queue. So I don't really want to invite people to walk over to the rocks. So a little bit of a visual barrier there. It's semi tall enough, I think, to maybe keep people from trying to like walk over there, but I don't know. I think it's good enough, and it's far back enough that I don't think anybody would actually be like skipping off of the queue path to go like explore this fence if this were a real park. So it ends up completing that area a little bit, and then basically we're just trying to create a little bit of interest here in these hills. We're varying up the rocks here. We're adding a couple tiers of terrain level here just to make a little bit of interest. It's one of those really weird like transitional pieces or areas in the park. Like I said, we're going from like a very high level to a very low level. And it's one of those areas that's just going to be kind of filler. But I wanted to do a little bit of detail work around it. And I think it ends up looking pretty good. It's going to look even better when we finally build out the rest of this area. But I actually found a couple more trees, and you actually saw me go back and add these to the parks, or the parts of the park that we already had, built near the Alpine Spirit ride. But there were a couple trees that I thought they just fit. So it fits the theme. I added a couple in, and I just kind of wanted to mix that up a little bit, because when we first built the Alpine Spirit, we were really only using like 2, or I guess technically 4 trees, but 2 of the versions were just like smaller versions of the bigger version. So I really wanted to vary that up a little bit, and a couple more trees mixed in here and there throughout the park really go a long way. So we're actually going to transition over here to the nighttime, and for the first time I think ever, we're going through in a time lapse and actually remembering to do some lighting work. So I built all of this really awesome little like subtle landscape area. I felt like subtle landscape lighting would accent it perfectly, and this is one of those things that I really want to try to do more, and I think moving forward we will, especially if we're going to try to bite off like more bite-sized projects per episode. But after the little subtle landscaping lights, I decided to actually go through and put some path lights down here throughout the queue, just because I wanted the entire queue to light up. So this is one of those things that I'll probably end up doing for other queues throughout the park. I really need to, I think, focus on the nighttime a little bit, even though we typically are playing without the nighttime on. But it's one of those things that you obviously need lights around the park. The parks look beautiful at night. This game is actually really good with lighting and different lighting effects. So it's really awesome to see at night. It's just, I think we've neglected it so far in this park, which, I don't know, I think we're addressing. And we actually addressed it a lot in this episode because we did those trash can lights. But in the end, with this queue over here, I ended up putting too many lights in, so you just saw me go back and actually delete some of the lights. But there were a couple things I wanted to accomplish with the lights here, and one of those was obviously the queue path. And the other one was I wanted to light up the end, or the base of the Ferris wheel a little bit, just because I felt like it was kind of dark at night, and this is one of those rides that you kind of want to have as like a showpiece, especially with where it's located in the park. The Ferris wheel actually has its own lighting on it, so it looks good from afar, but the base of the ride is extremely dark, so I wanted to add a little bit of light around it, and in the end I think this looks pretty good. We have these really cool like round lights going in on the base of the ride on the slope, and it ends up looking awesome. It kind of reminds me of like an old school like carnival ride, so I really like how this all turns out, and from afar it looks great. So I think that's pretty much it for this time lapse. Let's go ahead and bounce back over to the live portion. Alright guys, we are back, and I've turned the time to a dusk feel. So we have the lights on, yet I think we can still kind of see everything. So I felt like this was appropriate for this episode, since we did do a little bit of lighting around the area. And this is basically all we did. Like I said, it's a very landscapey episode, but the next one we're actually going to get to building, because I felt like I just really wanted to build a roller coaster, so I'm very excited for the next episode. But yeah, let's take a quick look around, and you can tell, like, this is all lit up over here. Let's kind of bop around a little bit here. It looks like we have a lot of lighting over at the Cedar Speedway, so that's good. There are little areas around that could probably use a little bit more lighting, but I think for the most part, we've done fairly well with lighting. One thing that actually wasn't in the time-lapse that I want to mention is during the past, I guess, few weeks, we actually got the vintage DLC pack, and this came with I think this was in the patch. The patch gave us some free items, and these vending machines are, I believe, free. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, either way, we got a really awesome set of vending machines. So scattered throughout the park, I did this on the live stream. We just checked out the new DLC, and of course we added a couple of these here and there. So it's kind of nice to see just a little additional point of interest in these really kind of weird paths where there's really not much going on. Just another thing for guests to be able to go over to and interact with. Anyway, the landscaping, like I said, it's very transitional here. We ended our retaining wall over there, and the Ferris wheel kind of puts an end to that. So I wanted to do more of a natural wall, and then moving forward, you're seeing a little bit of landscaping take effect over here, but we're going to be doing a lot more landscaping, getting all this finalized in, I guess, the next few episodes. The next episode, like I said, is going to be the roller coaster track building, and then the following episode, we're going to be doing some of the scenery work around the new roller coaster. You guys hopefully can help me name the coaster when we get to it, but I will say that some of this changes. So the new coaster is going to go kind of over here, and then the train itself is getting moved once again, and it really, there's this like weird kind of awkward space. This is what I was kind of mentioning during the time lapse, but there's this weird flat space in here, and I'm not really sure what to do with it. I was thinking of maybe putting like one of those little car rides down here, but then I was thinking maybe we'll put another set of lockers. Like, we have our lockers way at the beginning of the park for people coming in who want to like hide their backpacks or lock their backpacks up, but I feel like we could use another one of these somewhere in the middle of the park for people who maybe want to just ride like one or two roller coasters. They could put their stuff away and then you know, get it back after a ride. So that is kind of what I'm maybe thinking for over here, but we'll get to that eventually. Past that, there's really not too much else to talk about for this time lapse. Like I said, a lot of landscaping, and I actually really like the way the landscaping kind of panned out in this area. It's not flat anymore. There's a little bit of interest, and it works really well. Like the sloping kind of curves of the eye level, I guess, of the landscaping works really well with the curviness of the queue path. And this is honestly probably one of my favorite little queue paths, even though barely anybody is going to use it because the Ferris wheel is just not that exciting of a ride. So I've honestly not seen that many people queue up for it, but I don't know. Well, I guess hopefully get more people down here once we get the rest of the park kind of laid out. So yes, moving forward, we're going to be, you know, I've already talked about it, another roller coaster in the next episode, and I guess we're going to be just kind of building the park out, maybe in like a counterclockwise fashion. So I'm looking forward to all of that. I hope you guys are too. If you like this episode, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you disliked it, a thumbs down, of course. Go ahead and check out my Patreon if you want to be credited in the ends of the videos. And I guess that's going to be it. I'm going to go back and re-rest my voice and continue to get over this cold. So I will see you guys in the next episode.